I stood frozen, the world crumbling around me as I watched Derek's lips locked with Amanda's in a passionate embrace. My heart shattered into a million pieces, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife ever could. Derek, how could you? After all we've been through? I choked out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and utter devastation. Amanda pulled away from Derek, her red lips curled into a smug grin. Oh, he's mine now, Lily. You're just outdated. Her words stung like venom, each syllable twisting the knife deeper into my soul. I had dedicated my life to this man, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions to support his career and raise our family. And this was how he repaid me, by throwing it all away for a young, vapid thing like Amanda. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights at the office, the unexplained expenses, the distant looks he'd give me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. But I had been too blinded by love and loyalty to notice the cracks forming in our once perfect marriage. Get out, Derek spat, his eyes cold and unrecognizable. You're making a scene. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hurl every insult and accusation I could muster at them both. But I found myself paralyzed, my throat constricted by the weight of my shattered hopes and dreams. With what little dignity I had left, I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I made my way out of the office, I couldn't help but wonder where it had all gone wrong. Just that morning, I had awoken before dawn, as I did every day to prepare Derek's favorite breakfast and ensure his suit was pressed to perfection. It was a routine I had followed for decades, a labor of love that had once brought me joy. But now, as I looked back on the sacrifices I had made, the countless times I had put his needs before my own, I felt a bitter taste of regret lingering on my tongue. How could he do this to me? To us? As I stepped out into the cool morning air, the weight of his betrayal finally hit me full force. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting, as I made my way to the car. I had always prided myself on being a strong, resilient woman, but in that moment I felt utterly broken. The man I had loved and trusted with every fiber of my being had shattered my heart into a million pieces, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to put it back together again. The office became a battleground, with Amanda asserting her dominance like a lioness staking claim over her territory. Every interaction felt like a thinly veiled attack, her words laced with venom and hidden jabs. "Lily, darling, have you considered retiring?" she would say, her saccharine tone dripping with condescension. "You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think it's time to let the younger generation take over?" I would force a tight-lipped smile, swallowing the bitter retorts that threatened to spill from my lips. But with each passing day, it became increasingly difficult to maintain my composure. Derek, once my unwavering ally, seemed to be under Amanda's spell. He would nod along with her suggestions, his eyes glazed over as if in a trance. It was as if the man I had loved and built a life with had been replaced by a stranger. "Did you see the new marketing campaign Amanda put together?" He would gush, completely oblivious to the way his words cut me like a knife. "She's a real visionary." I wanted to scream, to shake him, and remind him of the countless nights we had stayed up late, dreaming of building this business together. But the words stuck in my throat, replaced by a bitter taste of betrayal. Nights became a blur of loneliness and heartache. While Derek was out working late with Amanda, I would sit alone in our once happy home, surrounded by the ghosts of memories past. Flashes of our struggling years would haunt me, the countless sacrifices we had made, the dreams we had deferred, all in the hopes of building a better life for ourselves and our family. And now it felt like all of that had been for nothing. "You're being paranoid, Lily," Emma would say, her voice laced with concern. "Derek loves you. He would never do anything to hurt you." But the evidence was mounting, and no amount of reassurance could ease the gnawing doubt that had taken root in my heart. Unexplained expenses, late nights at the office, the way Derek's eyes would linger a little too long on Amanda's form, it all painted a picture that I could no longer ignore. And then the final blow came. It was a lavish office party, one that Derek and Amanda had planned without so much as a word to me. As I stood in the corner, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine, I watched as they moved through the crowd like a perfectly choreographed dance. Amanda's laugh rang out like a bell, her head thrown back in exaggerated mirth, and Derek, my Derek, looked at her with a hunger that I had never seen before. It was in that moment that the last shreds of my denial crumbled away, leaving me raw and exposed to the harsh reality of their betrayal. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating further and further into the shadows, until I could no longer bear the sight of their happiness at my expense. With tears streaming down my face, I slipped out of the party and into the cool night air, my heart shattered into a million pieces. Derek and Amanda's relationship became more brazen, as if they were flaunting their indiscretion for all to see. The once subtle glances and lingering touches gave way to outright public displays of affection that left me reeling. "You two make me sick," I spat one day, unable to hold back the bile rising in my throat. Amanda merely laughed, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on Derek's arm. "Oh, Lily, don't be bitter just because you're past your prime." Derek said nothing, his eyes downcast like a scolded child. It was as if he had become Amanda's puppet, dancing to her tune without a shred of remorse. The office became a battleground, with Amanda taking every opportunity to assert her dominance over me. She would casually undermine my decisions, questioning my judgment in front of clients and colleagues alike. "Lily, darling, are you sure that's the best approach?" she would say, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe we should let the younger, more innovative minds take the lead on this one." And Derek, the coward, would nod along, his silence cutting deeper than any words ever could. It was during one particularly heated exchange that the final blow came. Amanda had once again overstepped her boundaries, belittling me in front of the entire staff. "Face it, Lily, you're a relic of the past," she sneered. "It's time for you to step aside and let the new generation take over, starting with Derek." That was the final straw. Years of pent-up frustration and anger bubbled to the surface, and before I knew it, I was unleashing a torrent of words that I could never take back. "You think you're so special, Amanda?" I snarled, my voice trembling with rage. "You're nothing but a cheap, home-wrecking tramp who's using her looks to get ahead." The room fell silent, everyone's eyes trained on us like spectators at a gladiator match. Derek's face had drained of color, his mouth hanging open in shock. Amanda, for once, was speechless. Her perfectly sculpted mask of confidence had slipped, revealing the insecure, desperate woman beneath. In that moment, I felt a surge of power coursing through my veins. For too long, I had allowed myself to be diminished, to be made to feel insignificant in my own life. But no more. With a newfound sense of determination, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the office, leaving a trail of stunned silence in my wake. As I drove home, the adrenaline coursing through my veins gave way to a profound sense of clarity. I had spent too long living in Derek's shadow, sacrificing my own dreams and aspirations for the sake of his success. No longer. From that moment on, I vowed to take back control of my life, to reclaim the power that had been stripped away from me piece by piece. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a force within me that they could never hope to contain. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready for war. The extravagant office party was the final nail in the coffin of my shattered marriage. As I stepped into the lavishly decorated ballroom, the weight of Derek and Amanda's betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. They were the center of attention, basking in the adoration of their colleagues and clients, like royalty holding court. Amanda's sequined dress clung to her body like a second skin, her perfectly coiffed hair and makeup a stark contrast to the haggard, defeated woman staring back at me in the mirror that morning. "Lily, darling, you made it," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were starting to worry you wouldn't grace us with your presence." Derek remained silent, his eyes averting mine as if he couldn't bear to look at me. The coward. "Of course I wouldn't miss this celebration," I replied, forcing a tight smile that felt more like a grimace. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating to the fringes, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine as I watched Derek and Amanda work the room like seasoned performers. They were a well-oiled machine, finishing each other's sentences and basking in the adulation of their adoring fans. It was sickening. At one point, I caught Amanda's eye from across the room. Her perfectly painted lips curled into a smug grin, as if to say, "I won. He's mine now." I wanted to scream, to hurl my glass at her and wipe that smug expression off her face. But I knew that would only give her the satisfaction she craved. So I did the only thing I could. I left. I slipped out of the party unnoticed, my heart heavy with the weight of my shattered dreams. As I made my way to my car, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled forth, hot and unrelenting. It was over. Derek had made his choice, and it wasn't me. The drive to Emma's was a blur, the streetlights blending together in a haze of grief and betrayal. By the time I arrived, I was a shell of a woman, hollowed out and broken. Emma took one look at me and immediately ushered me inside, her arms enveloping me in a warm embrace as I sobbed uncontrollably. "It's over, Em," I choked out between gasps. "Derek, he chose her." Emma's face hardened, her eyes burning with a protective fury I had never seen before. "That bastard," she growled, her grip on me tightening. "I'll kill him." I shook my head, too drained to even entertain the thought of vengeance. "It's not worth it," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. I need to get away from all of this." And so, with Emma's unwavering support, I packed what little belongings I had and moved into her spare room. It was a temporary solution, but it was the only thing keeping me afloat in the midst of my personal tsunami. In the days that followed, I became a ghost, a mere shadow of the woman I once was. I stopped returning Derek's calls, stopped going into the office, stopped caring about anything beyond the basic necessities of survival. It was as if I had retreated into a cocoon, shutting out the world and all its cruelties as I licked my wounds and tried to piece myself back together. But as the weeks turned into months, a fire began to ignite within me, a burning desire for retribution, for justice, for the sweet taste of revenge. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a sleeping giant, and I was determined to make them pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation they had inflicted upon me. The battle had only just begun. The fire that had been ignited within me burned brighter with each passing day, fueled by the sting of Derek and Amanda's betrayal. I knew that I couldn't let them get away with what they had done, not just to me, but to the life we had built together. It was Emma who first suggested seeking revenge. "They can't just treat you like that and get away with it," she fumed one night over glasses of wine that had become our nightly ritual. At first, I dismissed the idea, too consumed by my own pain and heartbreak to even entertain the thought of retaliation. But as the weeks dragged on and the humiliation of my public ousting sank in, a newfound determination took root. It was then that I reached out to Owen, an old high school friend who had always had a knack for storytelling and technology. If anyone could help me expose Amanda and Derek for the snakes they truly were, it was him. "So let me get this straight," Owen said, his brow furrowed as he nursed a beer across from me at our favorite dive bar. "You want to take down your lying, cheating husband and his mistress?" I nodded, my jaw set with grim resolve. "They think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming." A slow grin spread across Owen's face, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "All right, Lily, I'm in. Let's make these assholes pay." From that moment on, Owen became my co-conspirator, my partner in crime. We spent countless hours huddled over his laptop, scouring the internet for any shred of dirt we could find on Amanda's past. And boy, did we hit the jackpot. It turned out that Amanda was a serial homewrecker, leaving a trail of broken homes and shattered lives in her wake. She had a pattern, seducing wealthy, successful men, leeching off of them until they had nothing left, and then moving on to her next victim. "This is gold, Lily," Owen crowed, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he compiled our findings. "We're going to bury that bitch with her own past." With each new revelation, my thirst for vengeance grew stronger. I wanted the world to see Amanda for the manipulative, conniving snake that she truly was. And Derek? He was going to get a front-row seat to the destruction of his precious mistress. We started small, leaking snippets of information to local gossip blogs and forums, watching with glee as the whispers and rumors began to swirl. It was like throwing a match onto a pile of kindling, the flames of scandal licking at Amanda's carefully cultivated image. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see them burn. So we took it a step further, creating an anonymous website dedicated to exposing Amanda's sordid past. We posted screenshots of her past conquests' social media accounts, detailing the heartbreak and financial ruin she had left in her wake. And then we waited. At first, the reactions were muted, a few raised eyebrows, a few hushed whispers, but then, like a wildfire, the scandal took on a life of its own. Suddenly, Amanda's name was on everyone's lips, her once pristine reputation tarnished beyond repair. I could see the cracks beginning to form in her perfect facade, the strain of the mounting pressure wearing her down. And Derek? Well, he was finally starting to see the true nature of the woman he had risked everything for. As the fallout intensified, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was just the beginning, a mere taste of the retribution that was to come. Amanda and Derek had made the mistake of underestimating me, of thinking that I would simply roll over and accept their betrayal. But they were about to learn a valuable lesson. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I was just getting started. The fallout from our anonymous leaks was swift and merciless. Amanda's carefully curated image began to unravel at the seams, the skeletons in her closet finally coming to light. At first, she tried to brush it off, putting on a brave face and denying the allegations. But as more and more damning evidence surfaced, her defiant facade crumbled like a house of cards. It was during this time that I started receiving frantic calls from Derek, his once confident tone replaced by a desperate pleading. "Lily, you have to help me," he begged, his voice strained. "This whole thing is spiraling out of control. Amanda's passed. I had no idea." I couldn't help but revel in his misery, savoring the sweet taste of his comeuppance. "What's the matter, Derek?" I taunted. "Not so enamored with your precious Amanda anymore?" He fell silent, and I could almost hear the shame radiating through the phone. It was a delicious feeling, watching the man who had so callously discarded me squirm under the weight of his own mistakes. But as satisfying as it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see Amanda brought to her knees to watch as her world crumbled around her. It was Owen who suggested taking things a step further, arranging a face-to-face confrontation that would force Amanda to confront the consequences of her actions. "Meet me at the old parking garage downtown," he texted me one night, the cryptic message sending a thrill of anticipation coursing through my veins. When I arrived, the dimly lit garage was deserted, save for a lone figure leaning against a sleek sports car. As I drew closer, the figure stepped into the light, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Amanda, her once flawless makeup smeared and her eyes rimmed with red. She looked broken, a far cry from the poised and confident woman who had stolen my husband's heart. "You think you can just tarnish my image and get away with it?" she spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "Oh, Amanda, this is just the beginning. You're going to lose everything you've schemed for." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear cross her features, but just as quickly it was replaced by a steely resolve. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed, taking a step closer. "I'll destroy you, Lily. You and anyone else who gets in my way." I held my ground, matching her icy glare with one of my own. "Bring it on, sweetheart. I'm not the one with a closet full of skeletons." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her seething in my wake. It was a small victory, but it was enough to fuel the fire burning within me. From that point on, the gloves were off. Owen and I ramped up our efforts, leaking more and more damning information about Amanda's sordid past. We exposed her financial indiscretions, her web of lies and manipulation, leaving no stone unturned. And as her world crumbled around her, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was justice, plain and simple, a reckoning for all the pain and humiliation she had inflicted upon me and countless others. But even as Amanda's empire crumbled, there was still one final piece of the puzzle left to fall. Derek himself. He had been my partner, my confidant, my everything. And in the end, he had chosen the path of betrayal, casting me aside like a worn-out relic. Well, no more. It was time for Derek to face the consequences of his actions, to see the true monster he had aligned himself with. And I was going to make sure he had a front-row seat to the destruction. The endgame was in sight, and I was ready to unleash hell. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and I was ready to unleash hell upon Derek and Amanda. With Owen by my side, we had orchestrated a showdown that would bring their web of lies and deceit crashing down around them. It all came to a head at a pivotal company meeting where the board of directors and key clients had gathered to discuss the future of the business. Little did Derek and Amanda know, but Owen and I had been working behind the scenes, gathering support from those disillusioned by the scandal. As Derek took the stage, his cocky demeanor betrayed no hint of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Amanda sat in the front row, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit a carefully crafted mask of confidence. But I knew better. I could see the cracks in her facade, the subtle signs of strain that belied her true state of mind. Derek launched into his usual spiel, waxing poetic about the company's bright future and innovative vision. But this time, his words rang hollow, falling on deaf ears. That's when I made my move. Rising from my seat, I cleared my throat and stepped into the aisle, commanding the room's attention with a single pointed glare. Derek, Amanda, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, I announced, my voice steady and unwavering. Derek's bravado faltered, his eyes widening as he realized what was happening. Amanda, too, seemed to shrink back in her seat, her perfectly painted lips parting in a silent gasp. For too long, you two have been running this company into the ground with your selfish, unethical behavior, I continued, my gaze sweeping over the sea of stunned faces. But no more. The truth is out, and it's time for you to face the consequences. With a nod to Owen, he sprang into action, queuing up a presentation that laid bare the sordid details of Amanda's past. The affairs, the lies, the financial misdeeds that had left a trail of destruction in her wake. As the damning evidence played out on the screen, the room fell deathly silent, save for the occasional gasp or murmur of disbelief. Derek's face had drained of color, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before my very eyes. Amanda, on the other hand, had risen to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won, Lily?" she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed." And with that, she turned on Derek, unleashing a torrent of accusations and revelations that left him reeling. "You want to know the truth, Derek?" she spat, her words cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "I'm not the only one with skeletons in the closet." What followed was a brutal evisceration of Derek's character, as Amanda laid bare his own web of infidelities, financial misdeeds, and unethical business practices. It was a scorched earth tactic, a desperate bid to salvage what little shred of credibility she had left. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and the once mighty Derek stood before us, a broken and disgraced shell of a man. As the truth came crashing down around them, the board members and clients began to turn on Derek and Amanda, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage and disgust. It was over. Their reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end, and they had no one to blame but themselves. In the chaos that ensued, I caught Derek's eye, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of regret, a silent acknowledgement of the devastation he had wrought. But it was too little, too late. The damage had been done, and there was no turning back. As Derek and Amanda were unceremoniously ushered out of the meeting, their once bright futures reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me. Justice had been served and the scales had finally been balanced. It was a hard-won victory, but one that tasted oh so sweet. In the aftermath of Derek and Amanda's spectacular downfall, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted. A burden I had carried for far too long finally cast aside. As I stepped into the role of leading the company, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time to shine, and I was going to seize it with both hands. One of my first orders of business was to implement the eco-friendly community housing project that Derek had always dismissed as a pipe dream. It was an idea that had been simmering in the back of my mind for years, a vision of sustainable living that prioritized the environment and fostered a true sense of community. As I unveiled the plans to the team, I could see the skepticism on their faces, the same doubt that had plagued me for so long. But this time, I refused to let it deter me. "This is the future, people," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. a chance to leave a lasting legacy, to build something that truly matters. And to my surprise, they rallied behind me, their initial hesitation giving way to a shared enthusiasm for the project. With each passing day, I could feel myself growing stronger, more confident in my abilities and my vision. Gone was the meek, subservient woman who had allowed herself to be pushed aside and belittled. In her place stood a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had stared adversity in the face and come out on top. It was during this time that I found myself leaning heavily on the support of Emma and Owen, my two closest allies in the battle against Derek and Amanda. "I can't believe how much you've grown, Lily," Owen marveled one night over drinks at our favorite haunt. "It's like you've finally come into your own." I couldn't help but smile, feeling a swell of pride at how far I had come. "It's always been within me, Owen," I replied, my voice tinged with a newfound confidence. I just needed to find the strength to let it out. As our eyes met across the table, I felt a spark of something unfamiliar, a connection that went deeper than mere friendship. It was as if, in the crucible of my personal war, a new bond had been forged, one that held the promise of something more. But I pushed those thoughts aside, content to simply bask in the warmth of Owen's unwavering support and the knowledge that I had finally found my footing. With each passing day, the wounds of Derek's betrayal began to heal, the pain and anger giving way to a sense of inner peace and strength that I had never known before. It was as if I had been reborn, emerging from the ashes of my old life like a phoenix, more resilient and determined than ever. And as I looked to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. The world was my oyster, and I was ready to take it by storm. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time, my chance to leave a lasting legacy and build something truly remarkable. And with Emma and Owen by my side, I knew that anything was possible. The road ahead was sure to be paved with challenges and obstacles, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly prepared to face them head-on. Derek and Amanda may have tried to break me, but in the end, they had only succeeded in forging me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. And as I stood on the precipice of a new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the lessons I had learned along the way. The battle may have been hard-fought, but it was one that I had emerged from victorious. A warrior, a survivor, and a force to be reckoned with. The future was mine for the taking, and I had no intention of letting it slip through my fingers.
I was on a business trip abroad when my husband, Lucas, called me in the middle of the night. His remarks struck me like a ton of bricks. His words were, "Hey, I want a divorce." I went cold. What? I was able to say. I had always secretly worried the day would arrive, but I never imagined he would bring it up while I was so far away. "What are you saying? Could you fully explain this?" My voice trembled as I asked. Lucas chuckled bitterly. "I have a mistress, in case you haven't noticed. She is more attractive and younger than you. Together, we even have a child. So that I may be with them, I want you to get a divorce." I kept quiet. He continued as though to emphasize his point. "I've already sold the house and car." He hesitated, obviously anticipating my response. I inhaled deeply and responded to him in a brief, composed manner. "Okay." On the other end of the telephone, there was a startled quiet. "Huh?" Lucas mumbled, obviously perplexed. Perhaps he expected me to cry or beg him to stay, but I didn't. I had spent a lot of time getting ready for this possibility. He undoubtedly expected me to be shaken by his statements, but I wasn't. When I returned home a few days later, Lucas was waiting for me at the airport, looking quite anxious. Before we do that, though, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Jenna is my name. I am a homemaker of 35 years of age. I was raised in a typical middle-class household. I have liked learning Italian since I was a young child, and I began taking classes in elementary school. By the time they reached middle school, I was also gifted in English, and I even had the opportunity to live with a host family in Italy while I was in high school. I began to dream of working for a multinational corporation at that point. I enrolled in a prestigious university's business program in order to fulfill my desire. I put a lot of effort into achieving my goals while studying abroad in Italy. Finding a job wasn't simple, but I was overjoyed to get hired by my second-choice foreign firm. My sister even remarked, "Jenna, you're amazing," and my entire family was ecstatic. "We're quite pleased with you. Be careful and try your hardest." I was so grateful for their assistance. My new job was difficult to start. Although the corporation treated its employees well, the standards were quite high, and the work was more challenging than I had anticipated. With little experience and in my early 20s, I frequently had to put in long hours at work. However, my managers and coworkers were encouraging, and most significantly, I enjoyed working at the job I had always wanted. I finally got recognition for my efforts after years of hard labor. I began receiving increasingly significant assignments, and my friends would frequently comment on things like, "You're so cool," "Such a strong woman," or "You're on your way to becoming a successful businesswoman." But despite how people saw me, I had a soft spot for cute things. I loved collecting items of my favorite characters and even slept with stuffed animals. I wanted a pet, but my busy job made it impossible. So on my days off, I'd go to cat cafes to relax. At work, I kept a professional and sharp image, never showing the softer side of me. Maybe it was because I was so busy that I craved comfort in those little things. As I got older, many of my friends started getting married and having kids. At weddings, people would tell me, "You should get married soon too." I'd laugh it off and say, "I'm too busy with work." The truth was, I didn't feel romantic toward anyone at work or among my business contacts, and I didn't have time to meet new people. I wondered if I was meant to stay single forever. Back then, I thought that was okay. I liked focusing on my career, and it didn't seem like a bad way to live. Then one day, I went to yet another friend's wedding. I applauded the couple as usual, but this time I felt a bit uneasy. I was already past 30. If I wanted to get married, I needed to start looking for someone soon. The reception moved to a bar later that evening, and I found myself sitting alone at the counter with a drink. I watched the other guests laughing and the bride and groom smiling shyly. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. "Are you alone? Can I sit here?" The voice was smooth and pleasant, and it caught me off guard. "Oh, sure," I said, turning to look at the man. He was about my height, tall for a woman, and seemed younger than me. His face was average in a good way, not quite what I expected from his lovely voice. "Are you here for the wedding?" he asked. "Yes, I'm a friend of the bride," I replied. "I'm a high school friend of the groom. Want to have a drink together?" I nodded, and we started talking over drinks. "Wow, you work at that international company I've heard about. That's amazing. To someone like me, just a salaryman at a small company, you feel like you're from a different world," the man said. He introduced himself as Lucas, and I found him easy to talk to. Before we parted, we exchanged contact information and started meeting up after that. Lucas was 3 years younger than me and worked in sales at a small company. He had a gentle and calm personality, was a great listener, and knew how to give genuine compliments. I enjoyed spending time with him. After a few dates, Lucas confessed his feelings for me, and I happily said yes. Even though his yearly income was less than a third of mine, it didn't bother me at all. Back then, the more time we spent together, the more I found Lucas adorable. I didn't see him as super cool or dependable, and maybe that was why I never felt disappointed in him. Instead, I liked his cute and earnest nature. when he said things like, "I'd love to try your cooking." I couldn't resist and happily cooked for him. After dating for about a year and a half, Lucas surprised me with a ring. "I love how you're always so cool, but you have this cute side too. If you're okay with it, will you marry me?" he asked. I was caught off guard but thrilled. I accepted the ring with a smile. "Thank you, Lucas. Let's take care of each other as husband and wife." Lucas was over the moon, practically jumping for joy, and his happiness made me laugh. Afterward, we met each other's families to share the news. Lucas's parents were kind and simple people who happily blessed our marriage. My family was supportive as well, with my parents telling him, "Please take good care of our daughter." My sister, who was already married, quietly teased me saying, "He seems like just the type you choose, knowing your soft spot for cute things, but don't spoil him too much, okay?" I laughed and replied, I know. And just like that, life with Lucas began. Since we were starting fresh, I decided to buy a condo. It was a big decision, but I thought it would be a good investment for the future. I chose a slightly bigger place, thinking ahead in case we had kids. I believed our happy married life was about to begin, but reality hit me hard. Lucas didn't know how to do any housework. He had lived with his parents until our marriage and had always relied on his mom for everything. I tried to be patient and said, "Lucas, now that we're married, we should share the housework. If you don't know how, I can teach you." But Lucas frowned and said, "What? Now that we're married, isn't it your job to handle the housework?" I looked at him and replied firmly, "No, Lucas. Housework is something we share. I have a busy job, and it'll be a problem if you can't even handle housework." I said firmly, "Come on, get up. I'll teach you how to use the washing machine." I spent time teaching Lucas the basics of housework, even though he wasn't interested at first. Lucas started doing some cleaning and laundry, but his efforts were always half-hearted. I had to redo most of what he did. As for cooking, it was a disaster, so I handled it by preparing meals ahead of time. I didn't want to discourage him, so I made an effort to praise him even for the little he did. I thought encouragement might help, but instead of improving, Lucas began doing less and less. He knew I'd pick up the slack, so he started taking advantage of my patience. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Lucas, you need to stop relying on me so much. Learn to do housework properly. I'm busy with work and have business trips. You need to take care of things too." Lucas frowned and said, "What's with you? You've changed since we got married. You're always nagging. You make good money, so if you're going to complain so much, why not just hire someone to do the housework?" I was stunned. Yes, I earned a decent income, but spending money carelessly would drain our savings. Despite talking to him about it multiple times, Lucas refused to change. Then, about a year after we got married, I came home to find Lucas sitting pale-faced in the living room. "Lucas, what's wrong?" "You don't look good," I asked. He sighed and admitted, "My company is going bankrupt because of the recession. I'll be out of a job next month." What? I was shocked. Although Lucas had been working overtime more often lately, I had no idea his company was in such bad shape. "So what are you going to do? Have you started looking for a new job?" "I'll think about it later," he replied. "I'm tired and stressed. I just need some time." I decided to give him space, thinking he needed time to process everything. But after his company shut down and he no longer had work, Lucas spent all day playing video games. He didn't do any housework, and when I came home late, I'd find him sitting in front of the TV, completely absorbed in his games. This went on for months. My patience wore thin, and one day I finally said, "Lucas, haven't you rested enough? Don't you think it's time to start working again?" Lucas didn't even look up. "I want to think carefully about my next job," he said. "You know, at my old job, I was just being used. Next time, I want a job where I can achieve something meaningful, like self-realization or whatever." Even though I wanted to say, "What nonsense," I knew I couldn't force Lucas to work. So even after his unemployment benefits ran out, I kept supporting him. One day, as he was glued to his video games, I sarcastically said, "If you like games so much, why not try streaming? You might even make some pocket money." To my surprise, Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. You're so smart, Jenna. I'll give it a shot." "I have a good feeling about this," he said, full of enthusiasm. For someone who had been doing nothing for months, it was a sudden change, and I wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. "Then you'll need a PC and streaming equipment," he added casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I blinked in shock. "What? I don't have any savings." "But I'm serious about this," he explained, "so please buy it for me." Reluctantly, I bought everything he needed. Deep down, I thought this would fail, and he'd finally realize he needed to get a proper job. But a few months later, things took a surprising turn. Lucas became popular as a game streamer under the name Jay. To my shock, he even started ranking on charts. Fans online left positive comments like, "His voice is so nice," and "It's funny how bad he is at games." He managed to attract both men and women to his streams. He partially hid his face on camera and, of course, never mentioned that he was married. "See, I told you I could succeed when I tried. The world finally recognizes my talent," Lucas declared, full of himself. Despite his success, he didn't show a shred of gratitude for all the support I had given him, or for buying the equipment that started it all. Still, I approached him calmly. "Lucas, I'm happy you're doing well, but don't you think you should contribute some of your earnings to our household expenses? It's been a while since your unemployment benefits ended, and I've been covering everything." Lucas looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Why should I? You make enough to handle the living expenses. Let's just keep our finances separate." I was stunned. True to his words, Lucas kept all his streaming income to himself. By now, the kind and considerate man I had dated was long gone. He had become completely selfish and dependent on me. Around that time, I bought a car on loan, a luxury car I had always dreamed of owning. I only drove it on weekends, but I cherished it like a treasure. One day, Lucas casually said, "Hey, let me drive your car." I raised an eyebrow. "You work from home. You don't need a car for streaming. Why would you need to drive it?" "We're married, so it's fine. Come on, let me," he insisted. Eventually, I gave in and handed him the keys, though it didn't sit right with me. After that, Lucas started going out whenever he wanted during weekdays, while I was at work. His popularity as a streamer kept growing, and he gained a huge following. He also began living a flashy lifestyle, dressing in expensive designer clothes. I felt sad seeing how much he had changed, but since we were still married, I continued our life together, hoping things might get better. As we entered the 5th year of our marriage, my career was thriving. I was given more responsibilities at work and often had to travel overseas for business trips. Sometimes I'd be away for a few days, other times for up to 4 weeks. Each time I came home, the house was a complete mess, like a garbage dump. Lucas spent all his time locked in his room streaming. He still depended on me for everything and never helped out around the house. We barely talked anymore, and I found myself wondering, why am I still married to him? That's when I started collecting evidence for a divorce and making plans to move on. One day, I told Lucas, "I'll be going overseas again tomorrow for a 3-week business trip. Take care." He didn't even look up from his phone. I left for my trip and threw myself into my work. On the 11th night of my trip, I got a call from Lucas. "Hello. Lucas, do you know what time it is here?" "It's midnight," I said, half asleep. Then he dropped a bomb. "Hey, Jenna, I want a divorce." I froze, trying to process what I managed to say. I had suspected this might happen one day, but I never thought he'd bring it up while I was halfway across the world. "What do you mean? Can you explain properly?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Lucas chuckled. "You probably haven't noticed, but I have a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together." I didn't say anything, so he kept going. "I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our child. Oh, and I've already sold the house and car." He sounded so confident, like he expected me to crumble. But I didn't. I simply said, "Okay." "What?" Lucas stammered. He must have thought I'd cry or beg him to stay. He had no idea I had been mentally preparing for this moment for a long time. "You want a divorce, right?" "Fine," I said calmly. "There's a completed divorce paper in the living room drawer. You can sign it and submit it yourself." Lucas was taken aback. "You had divorce papers ready." "Well, thanks for making it easy. Goodbye, then. Enjoy being the woman your husband left behind." I held back a laugh. Sure. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Goodbye, Lucas." Then I hung up and immediately blocked his number. I called my sister and asked her for a favor, then went to bed and slept peacefully until morning. The next day, I focused on my work and stayed busy until my trip was over. Finally, it was time to go home. The business class seat provided by my company was so comfortable that I fell asleep during the flight. When I woke up, I stretched and thought, that was a good nap. No jet lag for me this time. I'm ready to get back to normal life. After landing, I collected my luggage and headed toward the airport lobby. As I reached the exit, I suddenly heard someone shouting, "Hey, Jenna." I turned to see Lucas running toward me, looking panicked. "Oh, why are you here?" I asked, surprised. I don't remember asking for a ride. Lucas didn't answer directly. Instead, he started ranting, his words spilling out in a rush. "What have you done?" "The car, the house. Because of you, I stepped back, startled by his strange behavior. "I don't understand what you're talking about," I said calmly. "Can I go now?" "I'm tired." I yawned and tried to walk past him, but he blocked my way. "Wait a minute. Listen to me," he shouted. So I stopped and crossed my arms, waiting for him to explain. "First, I submitted the divorce papers after you told me to," he began. "I see," I replied casually, scrolling through my phone and barely paying attention. "Are you even listening?" Lucas snapped. When I went home to meet with a real estate agent about selling the house, there was a lock on the door. I couldn't get in. Then, when I tried to use the car, there was an anti-theft lock on the tires and I couldn't drive it. I tried calling you, but you didn't answer. You blocked my number." I let out a small sigh. "Yes, I blocked your calls. And what about it?" Lucas's face turned red with anger. "Did you put the lock on the house and the tire locks on the car? How did you even do that when you were overseas?" I shrugged. I asked my sister to handle it. His eyes widened in shock. "Your sister?" "Yes," I said, keeping my tone light. "You said you sold the house and car, remember? But when my sister checked, both were still there. So I guess you were just bluffing. You were probably only getting estimates from agents, right?" Lucas's face turned even redder, and he stammered, "Well, yeah, that's true. But I was about to sell them." I couldn't help but sigh as Lucas continued ranting. No, Lucas, you couldn't have sold the house or car, even if you tried. Both are in my name, and all the important documents needed to sell them are at my parents' house. Lucas froze, his face blank. What? He muttered. Did you really think anyone could just sell a house or car by saying, I'm selling this, without being the legal owner? Obviously, they need proof of ownership and the proper paperwork, right? I said, shaking my head. Lucas looked completely stunned, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You've always dumped all the complicated paperwork on me during our marriage, so of course you don't even understand something this basic, I added with a hint of disgust. Lucas's face twisted in frustration. If you knew they couldn't be sold, why did you put locks on the house and the car? Because of you, I couldn't get into the house or use the car. It was awful. I sighed again. Why would I let someone who cheated, had a mistress, and demanded a divorce have free access to my house? Same with the car. They're in my name, so I just secured them for my own peace of mind. Lucas glared at me, his eyes bloodshot. What's with that attitude? I can't believe you're doing all this just because I couldn't sell your stupid property. You're so not cute. That's what I hated about you, always acting like you can handle everything yourself. So arrogant for a woman. I stayed calm and replied, Oh, really? Then why did you marry me in the first place? Lucas snorted. Obviously for your money. The fact that you worked at an international company and made good money. That was the only reason you were worth marrying. His words dripped with malice, but they didn't affect me. I just looked at him thoughtfully. Come to think of it, there wasn't much benefit in me marrying you either. Lucas's face turned red with anger. Don't act all high and mighty. I'm the one leaving you. My mistress is way better than you, hundreds of times cuter, and she even gave me a child. Doesn't that make you feel inferior? She's a better woman than you'll ever be. I couldn't help but smile faintly. Better than me, huh? What's so funny? Lucas snapped. Still smiling, I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo. Is this your mistress? I asked, showing him a picture of a young, attractive woman in her early 20s. Lucas's eyes darted nervously as he recognized her. You knew about Miriam? I gave him a sweet smile. Of course, you're not the only one who wanted a divorce. I've been gathering evidence for a while now. You're so careless, Lucas. Didn't you realize the dash cam records the interior too? His face went pale, but I didn't stop there. Once I saw when you were meeting her from the dash cam footage, it was easy. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. It didn't take long to identify your mistress. Lucas's face froze. I was a little surprised to find out she was already pregnant, though, I added. He stood there stunned before finally blurting out, Don't do anything to her. She's been through a lot after giving birth, and she's young. She doesn't have money, and she didn't even know I was married. I raised an eyebrow, pretending to look concerned. Wow, you're really defending her. You must love Miriam a lot. Of course I do, he said firmly. She's pure, sweet, and my soulmate. I'll protect her and our child no matter what. As Lucas puffed up with self-righteousness, I quietly took out my phone and played a video. It was dash cam footage from my car, showing Lucas driving with a heavily pregnant Miriam sitting in the passenger seat. Thanks for taking me on a drive today, Miriam said in a sugary voice. The food was delicious, too. Lucas's face in the video lit up with pride. You're so good at saying thank you. What a good girl, he said smugly. I want to marry you soon. Miriam pouted, crossing her arms. Really? Then hurry up and divorce that old hag already. I want you to be my husband before the baby comes, okay? Lucas's voice in the video reassured her. Just wait a little longer. I'll handle everything while she's on her overseas business trip. Then we'll be together, me, you, and the baby. We'll live comfortably with the money from selling the house and car. I paused the video and looked at Lucas. So Miriam didn't know you were married, huh? She seems pretty aware to me. Lucas was pale and sweating. Before he could say anything, I dropped another bombshell. And about her being pure, you might want to take a closer look. What are you trying to say? He shouted. I took out a stack of photos and scattered them on the floor. Lucas's face grew paler with each picture he looked at. What? What is this? Who are these men? The men, I said calmly. The photos show Miriam with different men, holding hands, entering hotels, and even getting prenatal checkups with a man who wasn't you. That's who Miriam really is. She targets popular streamers for relationships. Let me guess, you started out as a streamer, and she was just another fan, right? Lucas was frozen. He fell to his knees, clutching one of Miriam's photos, his face blank with shock. Looking at him pitifully, I said in a soft, almost sympathetic voice, "You really are something else, Lucas, planning to raise a child who might not even be yours." I said flatly, looking at Lucas, "Miriam told me I was the only one. This can't be true." I stared down at him without emotion. Can I leave now? We're basically strangers at this point. There's nothing left to discuss, is there? Suddenly, Lucas snapped out of his stupor and started yelling. If you hadn't shown me all this, I could have stayed happy. How cruel can you be? Because of you, I can't trust anything anymore. I couldn't help it. I sighed, feeling nothing but annoyance. That's not my problem, Lucas. Do you even hear yourself? Whatever. Do what you want. He sneered and said, "Fine. Even if I divorce you and leave Miriam, I'll still be fine. I've got over 3 million followers as a streamer, and I'm earning way more than you now. Too bad for you, you're losing a famous streamer as a husband. Serves you right." At that, I smiled sweetly and said, "Why don't you check your phone?" Lucas froze for a second before pulling out his phone with a smug look. As he unlocked it, his face turned pale. What's this? Over 1,000 notifications. What's going on? He frantically scrolled through his screen, his expression growing more horrified by the second. Finally, he looked up at me, trembling. "Jenna, you didn't." With the biggest smile of the day, I said, "Oh, I did. I exposed everything online, how you were married, had a mistress and a love child, and how horribly you treated me." Lucas let out a scream that echoed through the airport lobby, causing people around us to stare. He completely lost it. "What have you done to me? My reputation, my followers, my whole career is ruined. Look at these messages. They're calling me the worst man ever, saying I'd betrayed everyone." I casually held up my phone, tilting my head playfully. "Oh, by the way, this whole scene is being live-streamed. Wow, look at that. Over 5 million viewers. They're loving it." Lucas's face twisted in panic, and he lunged for my phone. "Give me that." But it was far too late. His ugly words and breakdown were already out there for everyone to see. As he collapsed onto the floor of the airport, rolling around in a fit of rage and despair, I calmly walked past him and headed toward the taxi stand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Afterward, Lucas faced intense backlash online. His entire career crumbled. His success had been built on the image of a sweet, clumsy, single man with a charming voice, a persona that attracted countless female fans. But now that image was completely shattered. The fact that Lucas was secretly married shocked his female fans, who felt betrayed. But the scandal didn't stop there. News of his mistress and love child caused even his male fans to turn on him, calling him unfaithful. The story spiraled, packed with juicy details, hiding his marriage, cheating on his wife, and then finding out the child might not even be his. It became a hot topic online, drawing attention even from people who had never heard of Lucas before. He was the talk of the internet for all the wrong reasons. Although Lucas posted a carefully worded apology on social media, the backlash didn't let up. His subscriber count plummeted, and eventually he had no choice but to stop streaming altogether. Sometime later, as I was leaving my office building after work, I saw Lucas waiting for me. His face was streaked with tears as he begged, "Jenna, I can't dream anymore. I can't even go outside without people staring or mocking me. Please help me. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. Let's get back together and be husband and wife again." I looked at him coldly and said, "If you keep stalking me, I'll call the police." That was the last time I saw Lucas. Later, I heard through the grapevine that the child Miriam had wasn't Lucas after all. When the truth came out, it caused even more drama, and the two of them broke up. I didn't let either of them off the hook. I demanded compensation from both. Lucas used up the last of his savings to pay me, while Miriam had to borrow money from her parents to cover her share. As for Miriam, she tried to push the actual father of her child, another streamer, into marrying her, but he rejected her outright. With no other options, she returned to live with her strict parents and is now raising the child there. I genuinely hope the child grows up healthy and happy despite everything. Lucas's predicament only worsened. He paid me, and now he had no money left. He had nothing after the businesses he had collaborated with demanded compensation for damaging their reputation. His kind and responsible parents severed their relationship with him after he sought support from them, feeling embarrassed by his actions. According to what I've been told, Lucas is now a shadow of the man he used to be, living alone in a dilapidated apartment. Despite all of this, I have no pity for him. For my part, I've gone back to being single and am totally devoted to my job. I listed the condo I shared with Lucas for sale because I couldn't bear to be there any longer. I feel lighter than ever, and it's a new beginning. I sold the condo for a healthy profit since, as it turned out, property values had increased over the previous few years. Additionally, I sold the vehicle that Lucas and Miriam had been driving to a friend. I got a new car for myself with that money. My sister, who had been a huge help, told me, "Well done, Jenna," after things had calmed down. Imagine him like a dog that has bitten you. Go forward and forget about him. But please, don't choose a man based solely on his attractiveness the next time. She was correct. Throughout the entire process, I learned a valuable lesson. I believe my marriage is over. I've come to the realization that I'm a lot more comfortable living for my work now. I recently purchased a single unit in a tower apartment, and I'm now living somewhere new. The finest aspect: pets are welcome in this flat. I intend to finally buy the cat I've always wanted now that my professional life is more stable. I want to take care of myself, be grateful for what I have, and have a happy and contented life from now on.
The phone rang just as I was about to sink into the couch with my favorite book. I glanced at the caller ID. Daniel. Sighing, I answered, "Hey, what's up?" "Laura, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff in." Daniel's voice, casual and unapologetic, hit me like a thunderclap. "What do you mean?" My heart raced, and I sat upright, abandoning my book. "I told you we should have them live with us. They're here now." I felt the room spin. "Daniel, we never agreed on this. How could you decide this alone while I'm visiting Uncle John?" Daniel scoffed. "Come on, Laura, it's not a big deal. Besides, I figured you wouldn't mind." Mind? The audacity of his assumption left me speechless. This house, our home, was suddenly invaded by his unilateral decision. "Daniel, we need to talk about this." "No need, just stay there a bit longer. Honestly, it might be better if you don't come back at all." His words stung, a cold dismissal that echoed in the now silent room. I had always known Daniel was headstrong, but this blatant disregard for our partnership, for me, was a new low. "All right then, Daniel." "If that's what you want," I replied, my voice steady, belying the storm inside. There was a pause, a moment of uncertainty. "You're okay with this?" "Yes, Daniel. I guess it's time for me to move on anyway." The call ended abruptly, leaving me alone with my thoughts. For a moment, I let the hurt wash over me, the pain of being so easily discarded. But then, a flicker of resolve sparked within me. I remembered the plan Uncle John and I had discussed, a contingency for just such a betrayal. I reached for my phone again, my fingers deftly composing an email to a contact who could set our plan in motion. As I hit send, a sense of empowerment surged through me. Daniel thought he could easily upend my life, but I wasn't going to let him have the last word. The house we shared, it was more than just walls and a roof. It was the embodiment of my dreams, my efforts. Daniel might have believed he could just push me out, but he was in for a surprise. Uncle John's advice echoed in my mind. "Always be 2 steps ahead, Laura." I started packing my things, each item a memory, a piece of the life I thought I had. But as I folded my clothes and gathered my belongings, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. I was no longer the naive girl who fell for Daniel's charm. I was Laura, strong and capable, and I was about to show Daniel that underestimating me was his biggest mistake. I closed my suitcase, my heart steady and my mind clear. It was time to face what was coming, and I was ready. I left the house under the cover of dawn, the first light casting long shadows on the path that had once led me to a shared dream. As I drove away, my mind wandered back to the days before Daniel, before the disillusionment. I had always been a bit of a dreamer, finding solace in the quiet corners of life. Growing up in a modest home with loving parents, I learned early on the value of hard work and the joy of simple pleasures. My mother, a talented home cook, had instilled in me a love for nutrition and healthy living. Her sudden passing during my teenage years left a void, one that I filled by immersing myself in studies, eventually leading me to become a dietitian. College was a blur of textbooks and late-night study sessions, but it was at a college reunion that I met Daniel. He was charismatic, the life of the party, and when his eyes met mine, I felt a spark that I had never experienced before. Our whirlwind romance was like something out of a fairy tale, and before I knew it, I was walking down the aisle, promising to spend my life with him. Our early days of marriage were filled with laughter and love. Daniel, with his job in marketing, seemed to be the perfect counterpart to my more grounded nature. But as the years passed, the laughter faded, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Daniel's charm had masked a deeper, more unsettling trait, his obsession with status and wealth. His comments on my salary, once infrequent, became a constant refrain. "You'd think a dietitian would earn more," he'd say, a sneer in his voice. I brushed off these remarks, focusing instead on our son, Alex, who was growing into a thoughtful and intelligent young man. Alex, much like me, found his father's materialistic views troubling. He had ambitions of going to a top university, dreams that I wholeheartedly supported. Daniel, however, seemed more concerned with how Alex's choices would reflect on him rather than on what was best for our son. It was during one of our heated arguments about Alex's future that I realized how far Daniel and I had drifted apart. "He needs to aim for a prestigious college, Laura. It's about our family's reputation," Daniel insisted. "But it's Alex's future, Daniel. Shouldn't we support what he wants?" I countered, frustration evident in my voice. Daniel's dismissive attitude that night was a turning point for me. I knew then that something had to change, and so I found myself confiding in Uncle John, my mother's brother, and a wise confidant. It was he who helped me see the importance of standing up for myself and Alex. Together we devised a plan, a way to ensure that no matter what Daniel did, I would be able to protect my son and myself. As I drove towards Uncle John's house, the rising sun casting a warm glow over the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just a retreat. It was a step towards a future where I was no longer a bystander in my own life. It was time for Daniel to see that the quiet, unassuming Laura he thought he knew was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who wouldn't back down. Uncle John's home was a sanctuary, a place where I could gather my thoughts and plan my next steps. And over cups of steaming coffee, we sat at his old oak table, plotting. Uncle John, with his years of experience in law and a keen understanding of human nature, was the perfect ally. "You need to think about the long game, Laura," he advised, his eyes serious. "Daniel thinks he's outsmarted you, but we'll turn the tables on him." We discussed various strategies considering legal and financial aspects. Uncle John suggested transferring certain assets to my name and documenting all of Daniel's actions, should the situation escalate to legal proceedings. Throughout our discussions, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Daniel, ranging from dismissive to outright hostile. "You're overreacting, Laura. Just come back and we'll forget all this," read one. "You're being childish. Remember, I'm the one with the high-paying job," taunted another. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the plan. It wasn't just about getting back at Daniel. It was about securing a future for Alex and me. The thought of Alex brought a pang of guilt. He was preparing for his college entrance exams, and this upheaval was the last thing he needed. I called him, explaining as much as I could without burdening him further. "Mom, I get it. Dad's been different." Alex's voice was mature beyond his years. "Don't worry about me. I'm with Grandma and Grandpa. Focus on what you need to do." Hearing his words, I felt a mix of pride and sadness. My son was growing up in a broken home, yet he was showing more resilience and understanding than many adults. A few days turned into a week and then 2. Uncle John and I refined our strategy, ensuring every base was covered. We planned for the worst, but hoped for the best. The aim was to confront Daniel with a fait accompli, a situation where he had no choice but to acquiesce to our terms. Meanwhile, I kept up with work remotely, grateful for understanding colleagues and a flexible job. The normalcy of work was a welcome distraction, but every evening, as I sat in Uncle John's study, the reality of my situation sank in. Daniel, once the man I thought I would spend my life with, was now someone I barely recognized. His greed and selfishness had eroded the love I once felt, leaving in its wake a determination to protect what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my son's future, and my peace of mind. As I prepared to return to New York, I felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead would not be easy, but I was no longer the woman who left that house weeks ago. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever Daniel threw my way. The journey back to New York was a quiet one, filled with a mix of apprehension and resolve. The city's skyline, once a symbol of shared dreams and aspirations, now loomed like a battleground. As Uncle John drove, his steady presence was a reassuring reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. The plan was simple, yet bold. We would confront Daniel with the reality of his actions and the consequences that awaited him. Uncle John had already laid the groundwork, consulting with legal experts and ensuring that everything was in place for a seamless execution. Upon arriving home, the sight of moving boxes and unfamiliar cars parked outside was jarring. Daniel's parents, unaware of the impending storm, greeted me with polite smiles. "Laura, it's good to have you back," Daniel's mother said, a hint of unease in her voice. Daniel, however, was nowhere to be seen. His absence was both a relief and a frustration. I needed to face him, to look him in the eye and let him know that his days of controlling our lives were over. The house felt different, as if it had lost its warmth. Daniel's parents had made themselves comfortable, but the atmosphere was tense, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken conflict. I retreated to my room, the same room where I had packed my bags weeks ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. I unpacked my suitcase, each item a symbol of the new life I was carving out for myself and Alex. That evening, as I sat at the dinner table with Daniel's parents, the conversation was strained. They spoke of Daniel in glowing terms, oblivious to his manipulative ways. I nodded and smiled, keeping my true feelings hidden. The time for revelations was not yet here. Later that night, Daniel finally returned. He was surprised to see me, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Laura, you're back," he said, his tone a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Yes, Daniel, we need to talk," I replied, my voice calm but firm. He scoffed. "What's there to talk about? You left, remember?" I stood my ground. "It's about the house, Daniel, and our future." Daniel laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the empty room. "What about it? You think you can just come back and everything will be as it was?" "No, Daniel, things will never be the same, but you need to understand something. This house, it's not just yours to decide on." His expression changed, a hint of worry creeping in. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, ready to lay out the reality he was about to face. "This house, it's in my name too, and I've been talking to a lawyer. We have options, Daniel, and none of them look good for you." For a moment, Daniel was speechless. The confident, controlling man I had known was gone, replaced by someone who realized he was no longer in control. "This is just the beginning, Daniel. You thought you could push me out, make decisions without me. But I'm not the same person you thought you could manipulate. I'm fighting back, for me and for Alex." Daniel's face hardened, the reality of the situation setting in. "You can't do this, Laura. I won't let you." But I was resolute. "It's already done, Daniel. You've made your choices, and now you have to live with them." As I left him standing there, a mix of anger and disbelief on his face, I knew that the hardest part was yet to come. But I was ready to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my son's future. The following days were a whirlwind of activity and tense exchanges. Daniel oscillated between anger, disbelief, and desperate attempts to regain control. But with Uncle John's guidance and my newfound resolve, I navigated each challenge with a clarity I never knew I possessed. Daniel's parents, caught in the middle, were a source of unexpected sympathy. His mother, particularly, seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. "Laura, I never realized things were this bad between you two," she confided one afternoon, her eyes filled with concern. "It's been building up for a while," I admitted, finding solace in her understanding. Our conversation was a reminder that Daniel's actions affected more than just us. As the day of reckoning approached, I prepared myself for the final confrontation. Uncle John had arranged for a meeting with Daniel, his parents, and our respective lawyers. The goal was to settle matters as amicably as possible, given the circumstances. The meeting was held in a neutral location, a stark conference room that mirrored the cold reality of our situation. Daniel was already there when I arrived, his posture rigid, his face a mask of defiance. "Let's just get this over with," he muttered as I took my seat opposite him. The lawyers laid out the facts. The house, purchased with contributions from both of our families, was legally co-owned. Daniel's unilateral decisions and his recent behavior had put him in a precarious legal position. As the reality of his situation dawned on him, Daniel's facade began to crumble. He looked at me, a mix of anger and desperation in his eyes. "Laura, please. We can work this out. Just come back home." But the home he spoke of no longer existed, not for me. "Daniel, you made your choices. Now I'm making mine. It's over." The negotiations were tense but straightforward. We agreed to sell the house and divide the proceeds. Daniel's parents would move to a smaller place, and I would start afresh, somewhere new, somewhere where the shadows of the past couldn't reach. As the meeting concluded, Daniel's mother approached me, her eyes moist with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, Laura. I'm sorry for everything." I hugged her, a gesture of mutual forgiveness and understanding. "Take care of yourself," I whispered. Leaving the conference room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The battle was over, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I was free. Free from Daniel's control, free to build a new life for Alex and myself. The drive back to Uncle John's house was a quiet one. I looked out the window, the city passing by in a blur. I thought of Alex, of the bright future he had ahead of him, and of the new chapter I was about to begin. Uncle John broke the silence. "You did well, Laura. I'm proud of you. Thank you, Uncle John, for everything. As we drove on, the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the city. It felt like a promise of new beginnings and brighter days ahead. Months had passed since the day I walked away from that conference room, away from a life that was no longer mine. With each passing day, the sense of liberation and self-discovery grew stronger. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece, on my own terms. The house sold quicker than we had anticipated. With my share of the proceeds, I bought a quaint apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place where Alex and I could start anew. The walls were adorned with memories, both old and new, each telling the story of our journey. Alex had excelled in his exams, earning a place at his desired university. His resilience and determination were a source of immense pride. We often talked about his future, his dreams, and I saw in his eyes the same hope and ambition that had driven me through my darkest days. I found solace in my work, diving into community nutrition programs and workshops. My experiences had ignited a passion for helping others, for sharing the lessons I had learned about self-care and resilience. Occasionally, I heard news about Daniel through mutual acquaintances. He had moved into a smaller place. His lifestyle drastically changed. There was no joy in hearing of his struggles, only a quiet acknowledgement that the choices we make shape our lives. Uncle John remained a pillar of support, his wisdom and guidance a constant in my life. We often met for coffee, discussing everything from politics to philosophy. He had been more than just a mentor through my ordeal. He had become a true friend. As I sat in my new living room, the evening sun casting a warm glow through the window, I reflected on the journey I had been through. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for my rights, it had all led me to this moment, a moment of peace and contentment. I had learned that strength comes not from what we endure, but from how we rise above it. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself and my son, and in doing so, had found a sense of purpose and self-worth that no one could take away. The phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Alex, his voice bright and full of excitement. "Mom, I got an internship. It's exactly what I was hoping for." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "That's wonderful, Alex. I'm so proud of you." As we chatted, I realized this was what true happiness felt like. It wasn't about a perfect life. It was about a life lived with integrity, resilience, and love. The chapter with Daniel had closed, but a new one was just beginning. A chapter filled with hope, possibilities, and the promise of a future crafted by our own hands. And so, as the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I knew that no matter what the future held, Alex and I would face it together, stronger and wiser than ever before.
The text arrived at 3:47 p.m., right as I was wrapping up the quarterly earnings presentation. Unknown number. Just 3 words and a video attachment. Watch this carefully, Eva. I almost deleted it. Spam comes in all forms these days, and running a tech company means being extra cautious about random attachments. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the use of my name, or the way my phone displayed a preview of the video thumbnail, a conference room I recognized all too well. I'm Eva Carter, co-founder of Carter Technologies, and that video would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. "Mrs. Carter, the board is ready for you," my assistant called through the intercom. 5 minutes, I replied, my finger hovering over the play button. The thumbnail showed our main conference room, the one with that hideous abstract painting Nathan insisted on hanging last year. Nathan. My husband. My business partner. The father of my child. The video started playing. The timestamp showed last Thursday, when Nathan said he was meeting potential investors. He stood at the head of the table, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, his classic "trust me" pose. But these weren't investors. "The transfer needs to happen before the end of the quarter," Nathan was saying, pointing at something on his laptop. "Eva doesn't check the offshore accounts. She never has." My stomach clenched. The voices continued, discussing numbers, percentages, something about shell companies. I recognized one of the other voices, James from accounting. The same James who's been avoiding eye contact with me for weeks. Mrs. Carter. The intercom again. The board is getting impatient. I switched off the intercom. My hands were steady as I texted back to the unknown number. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who thinks you deserve to know. Check account 847-92X. My fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing our company's financial portal. The account number wasn't familiar, but I had access to everything. Or so I thought. The system prompted me for a secondary password I'd never seen before. Eva. Nathan's voice at my door made me jump. They're waiting for us, honey. I locked my phone, slipped it into my pocket. 18 years of marriage, and I'd never heard anything false in his voice before. Now, every word felt like a lie. Coming, I said, gathering my presentation materials. When I looked up, he was smiling, that same smile that won me over in college, the one our daughter Megan inherited. Megan. God, Megan. She was supposed to start college in the fall. We'd been planning it for years, saving for it. The board meeting passed in a blur. I presented numbers I no longer trusted, smiled at people I couldn't be sure were complicit. Nathan sat across from me, nodding encouragingly, playing his part perfectly. Excellent quarter, he announced at the end. Eva, you knocked it out of the park, as usual. The others murmured their agreement. I watched James shuffle his papers, avoiding my gaze. Back in my office, I called Lucas Bennett in HR. I need everything you have on account 847-92X. Off the record. Eva, that's. He paused. That's not a standard account. I know. That's why I'm asking you. Another pause. Give me an hour. And Eva? Be careful who you trust right now. I hung up and stared at the family photo on my desk. Nathan, Megan, and me at last year's company picnic. All smiles. All lies. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. There's more. Much more. Are you ready to see how deep this goes? I looked at Nathan through my office window, watching him charm a group of investors. My husband. My betrayer. Show me everything, I typed back. The response was immediate, tomorrow. Noon. The coffee shop on 7th. Come alone. I deleted the thread and opened my calendar. Tomorrow at noon, I had lunch scheduled with Nathan's mother Rachel. Perfect alibi. The game was on, and Nathan had no idea he'd already lost. The coffee shop on 7th was packed when I arrived, but I spotted my mystery contact immediately. Lucas Bennett sat in the corner booth, his usual crisp appearance replaced by weekend casual. The sight of him made my chest tighten. I'd expected a stranger, not my own head of HR. You could have just told me directly, I said, sliding into the booth. Would you have believed me? Lucas pushed a manila envelope across the table. Or would you have dismissed it as office politics? He had a point. I'd known Lucas for 5 years, trusted him with personnel issues, but this was different. This was my husband, my company, my life. How long have you known? 3 months. Started noticing discrepancies in the payroll system. Dummy accounts, ghost employees. He tapped the envelope. The video was just confirmation of what I already suspected. I opened the envelope, spreading documents across the table. Bank statements, transfer records, emails. My coffee grew cold as I pieced together Nathan's betrayal. My phone buzzed. Megan, Mom, where are you? Dad's acting weird about lunch with Grandma Rachel. Tell her I'm sorry, I typed back. Emergency meeting. Everything okay? I stared at her message. Megan had her father's intuition, she could smell a lie a mile away. Just work stuff, honey. See you at dinner. Lucas watched me put the phone away. She doesn't know. She's 18. About to graduate. This would destroy her. Eva. His voice softened. She's going to find out eventually. Nathan's been siphoning money from her college fund. The world tilted sideways. What? Account 847-92X. That's where the education trust was moved. He's been. Mrs. Carter. Rachel's voice cut through the cafe noise like a knife. Nathan's mother stood by our table, her perfectly maintained smile slipping as she looked between Lucas and me. I thought we had lunch plans. Rachel, No need to explain. Her smile turned brittle. Nathan mentioned you've been working late. Having lots of meetings. The implication hung in the air. I could see the story forming in her mind: secret rendezvous, clandestine meetings, her son's wife with a younger man. It's not what you think, Lucas started. It never is, dear. Rachel patted my shoulder. I'll let Nathan know you're busy. She left before I could respond, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. Well, Lucas said, that complicates things. My phone buzzed again. Nathan, Mom says you're in a meeting with Lucas. Everything okay? Then Megan, Dad's being super weird. What's really going on? And Rachel, we need to talk about Nathan. Soon. The messages blurred together, a chorus of demands and questions I couldn't answer honestly. Not yet. I need to see those college fund records, I told Lucas. Everything. Eva, maybe we should. My daughter's future, Lucas. He's stealing my daughter's future. He pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. Numbers filled the screen, transfers, withdrawals, a systematic draining of resources. Each transaction felt like a personal betrayal. He's planning something big, Lucas said. These patterns suggest. The cafe door chimed. Nathan walked in, all casual confidence and practiced charm. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, I saw something flicker behind his smile: fear, maybe, or guilt. Eva, honey. He approached our table, kissing my cheek as if nothing was wrong. Lucas, good to see you. Mind if I join? Lucas closed his laptop too quickly. Nathan noticed, his smile tightening at the corners. Actually, I stood up, gathering the documents we were just finishing. Quarterly reviews, you know how it is. Of course. Nathan's hand found the small of my back, possessive. Dinner at home tonight? Megan's making her famous lasagna. I nodded, feeling his fingers press against my spine. The same hands that signed away our daughter's future. Wouldn't miss it, I said, and watched his shoulders relax slightly. As we left the cafe, I caught Lucas's eye. He gave me a subtle nod, he'd keep digging, keep gathering evidence. Nathan's hand stayed on my back, guiding me toward his car, and I let him think he was still in control. Tonight at dinner, I'd watch my husband lie to our daughter's face. And I'd start planning exactly how to tear his world apart. Megan's lasagna sat untouched on my plate as Nathan detailed his latest investment opportunity to our daughter. Every word from his mouth was poison, wrapped in that trademark charm that had fooled me for 18 years. It's revolutionary, he said, gesturing with his wine glass. The kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. Like Mom's company? Megan asked, and I nearly choked on my water. Nathan's smile flickered. Different market, sweetheart. Fresh perspective. My phone vibrated. Lucas, emergency. Check your email now. I excused myself, hands trembling as I opened my laptop in the study. The email contained a single attachment, incorporation papers for Carter Innovation Labs. The registration date was tomorrow. The seed money. Every penny from Megan's college fund. Mom. Megan stood in the doorway. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Before I could answer, Nathan appeared behind her. Everything all right, honey? I closed the laptop. Fine. Just work. Always work these days, he said, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. Speaking of which, the board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. First I'm hearing of it. Last minute thing. Probably nothing. He squeezed Megan's shoulder. Hey kiddo, why don't you clear the table? Mom and I need to talk business. The moment Megan left, Nathan's facade cracked. You've been digging. And you've been stealing. It's called investing in our future. Our future. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. Or your future with Carter Innovation Labs. His expression hardened. So you know. I know you're stealing our daughter's college fund. I know you're planning to destroy everything we built together. Eva, listen. Board meeting tomorrow. Let me guess, a vote of no confidence. How long have you been poisoning them against me? He stepped closer, voice dropping. You're emotional. Not thinking clearly. This is business. This is family. Family? He scoffed. Family is what I'm trying to protect. You've gotten unstable. The board's concerned. Lucas's reports. Lucas's reports. He's been documenting your erratic behavior. The secret meetings, the unauthorized investigations, the paranoid accusations. My world tilted. Lucas. My ally. My confidant. You're lying. Am I? Nathan pulled out his phone, showed me emails from Lucas detailing my concerning patterns of behavior. Mom. Megan's voice cracked. She stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. What's happening? Nathan moved to comfort her, but she stepped back. Don't. I heard everything. The college fund. How could you? Sweetheart, it's complicated. It's theft, I said. Plain and simple. Your mother's upset, Nathan said smoothly. She's been under a lot of pressure. Stop lying. Megan's shout echoed through the house. Just stop. She ran upstairs, her door slamming like a gunshot. Well done, Nathan said. You've upset her. I've upset her. You stole her future. I secured it. Tomorrow, the board will vote you out. Temporary medical leave, for your own good. Then, once you're gone, Carter Innovation Labs launches. Clean slate. And Megan? She'll understand eventually. Kids always do. My phone buzzed again. Lucas, I'm sorry. He gave me no choice. Another message appeared, from Alex Parker in IT. Got everything. Server logs, deleted emails, all of it. Meet me tonight. I looked at Nathan, still talking, still spinning his web of lies. Get out. Eva. Get out. Before I call the police. He smiled, sad and patronizing. And tell them what? That your loving husband is trying to protect you from yourself. That your trusted HR director supports my concerns. Think carefully about your next move, Eva. There's still a way we can all win. He left me standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. Upstairs, I could hear Megan crying. My phone lit up one last time. Alex, time sensitive. Yes or no? I thought about Nathan's smug certainty, about Lucas's betrayal, about my daughter's tears. Yes, I typed back. Tell me everything. The game had changed. Nathan thought he'd won, thought he'd trapped me in a corner. But he'd forgotten one thing: a wounded animal is most dangerous when it has nothing left to lose. Tomorrow, the board would try to take my company. Tonight, I'd make sure they learned exactly who they were dealing with. Alex's apartment was a maze of computer screens, each displaying fragments of my shattered life. Financial records, emails, surveillance footage, my husband's betrayal documented in cold, digital detail. He's been planning this for 14 months, Alex said, pulling up a timeline. Started right after you landed the Morrison contract. The Morrison contract. Our company's biggest deal. The one Nathan had insisted I take lead on, keeping me distracted with endless meetings and presentations. Show me everything. Alex clicked through documents. Multiple shell companies, all feeding into Carter Innovation Labs. But here's where it gets interesting. He highlighted a series of transactions. These transfers. They're not just from Megan's college fund. My throat tightened. What do you mean? Your mother's medical trust. The one you set up after her cancer diagnosis. The room tilted. I gripped the desk, knuckles white. That money was untouchable. Nathan found a way. Used your power of attorney to. My phone rang. Megan's ringtone. I answered to the sound of her crying. Mom. Grandma Rachel's here. She's saying terrible things about you. In the background, I heard Rachel's voice. Your mother's always been unstable, dear. Remember that time in Aspen? Aspen. The ski trip where I'd caught Nathan with receipts for jewelry I'd never received. He'd convinced everyone I was paranoid, imagining things. I'm coming home, I said. Don't bother. Nathan's voice replaced Megan's. Rachel's helping Megan pack. She'll stay with us until you recover. The line went dead. Alex watched me, concern etched on his face. Eva. He's taking my daughter. My voice sounded distant, hollow. Using my own mother-in-law to, I stopped, something clicking into place. Pull up Rachel's financial records. Alex's fingers flew across the keyboard. Nothing unusual in her personal accounts, but... Wait. He zoomed in on a document. There's a trust in her name, established 3 months ago. Significant monthly deposits. Nathan's paying her. To what? Discredit you? My laugh was bitter. To help him steal my life. I scrolled through the records, each transaction feeling like another betrayal. The board meeting tomorrow. He's going to use Rachel's testimony to prove I'm unstable. We can fight this. With these records. No. I straightened, a plan forming. Let him think he's won. Eva. The board wants to put me on medical leave. Fine. I'll give them exactly what they expect, the unstable woman having a breakdown. I pulled out my phone, dialing Lucas's number. He answered on the first ring. Eva, I can explain. Save it. You're going to help me, or I'll release proof that you helped Nathan embezzle funds. Silence. Then, what do you need? Tomorrow's board meeting. I want you to back up everything Nathan says about my mental state. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. Just do it. I hung up and turned to Alex. How long would it take to transfer everything you found to an offshore server? Hours. Maybe all night. Do it. And Alex? I met his eyes. Thank you for not being like Lucas. He nodded, understanding what I couldn't say. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "Mom, what's really going on? Dad says you're sick, but I saw the documents on his laptop. About the college fund." I stared at her message, tears blurring my vision. My daughter, smarter than either of us had given her credit for. "Trust me," I typed back. "And whatever happens tomorrow, remember that everything I do is to protect you." I looked at Alex, still working through Nathan's digital trail. "One more thing. I need you to help me disappear." He stopped typing. "Disappear? Nathan thinks he's destroying me. Tomorrow, I'll let him think he has." I smiled, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. "And then I'll show him what real destruction looks like." The screens around us glowed with evidence of Nathan's crimes, casting shadows that danced like promises of revenge. Tomorrow, I'd lose everything: my company, my reputation, maybe even my daughter's trust. But Nathan had forgotten the most important lesson in business: sometimes you have to sacrifice everything to win the game. The board meeting went exactly as planned. I played my part perfectly: the unstable wife, the paranoid executive, the woman on the edge. When Rachel testified about my episodes, I threw my coffee cup against the wall. Nathan barely hid his triumphant smile. 2 hours later, I sat in Fresh Start Tech's modern lobby, my resignation letter still warm in the board's hands. Alex had arranged everything through back channels: a new identity, a consulting position, and most importantly, a direct line to Nathan's eventual downfall. "Miss Evans." The receptionist called my new name. "Mr. Chen will see you now." Fresh Start's CEO stood as I entered, extending his hand. "Sarah Evans. Your reputation precedes you." If only he knew which reputation. "We're expanding our cybersecurity division," he continued. "Your experience with Carter Technologies makes you uniquely qualified to protect us from similar companies." The irony wasn't lost on me. Nathan's new venture would target exactly the kind of startups Fresh Start represented. My phone vibrated. "Megan, Mom, where are you? Dad's telling everyone you had a breakdown." I switched it off. Distance was crucial now, even from her. Especially from her. "When can you start?" Chen asked. "Immediately." I handed him a folder, including some initial observations about potential vulnerabilities in your system. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising. "These are remarkably detailed. I'm thorough." "So I see." He paused at one page. "This signature approval process, it's exactly what Carter Technologies uses." "Used to use," I corrected. "Before their recent leadership changes." My phone buzzed again, a text from Alex. "Nathan's making his move. Carter Innovation Labs just filed for incorporation." Perfect timing. "Speaking of Carter Technologies," I said carefully, "I heard rumors about a new competitor entering the market." Chen nodded. "Carter Innovation Labs. They're already headhunting our engineers. You'll need someone who knows their playbook." "Is that what you're offering?" I smiled, channeling Nathan's trademark charm. "I'm offering to help you destroy them before they destroy you." Later, in my temporary office, Alex brought the news I'd been waiting for. Nathan submitted his resume. Through a headhunter, trying to be subtle. "And Chen wants to interview him next week. He doesn't know you're here." I pulled up Nathan's application on my screen. His list of accomplishments read like a confession of theft. Every major project he claimed credit for had been mine. "Mom." Megan's voice at my door froze my blood. I turned slowly. My daughter stood there, holding a familiar manila envelope. "How did you find me?" "Alex told me." She stepped inside, closing the door. "After I showed him these." She spread documents across my desk, Copies of everything Nathan had stolen, everything he'd hidden. I've been collecting evidence since I found the first transfer from my college fund. Megan. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't try to protect me. I'm not a child anymore. I studied her face, Nathan's determination, my analytical mind. How long have you known? Long enough to make my own copies before Dad could destroy everything. She met my eyes. I want in. No. Absolutely not. Mom, he stole my future. Our future. She laid out more papers. And I found something you missed. The document showed a series of transfers to an account I didn't recognize. The beneficiary, Michael Carter. Who's Michael Carter? Megan's laugh was bitter. Dad's other son. The one he had with his assistant 3 years ago. The room spun. Another family. Another life. Another betrayal. I have a plan, Megan said. But we need to move fast. Dad's interview is next week, and he's already talking about bringing his whole family to Fresh Start. I looked at my daughter, no longer the child I was trying to protect, but a woman demanding justice. Tell me your plan. She smiled, and for the first time, I saw myself in her expression, not the woman Nathan had tried to destroy, but the one who would destroy him instead. First, she said, we need to talk about Dad's interview. And about Michael's mother. The game was changing. Nathan thought he was playing chess, but he'd never noticed who was really moving the pieces. Behind the one-way mirror, I watched Nathan adjust his tie, practicing that winning smile that had fooled so many for so long. The interview room at Fresh Start Tech felt like a cage, trapping us both in this moment. Ready? Alex whispered, adjusting the recording equipment. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Megan squeezed my hand, then took her position by the door. Everything we'd planned hinged on the next 30 minutes. Lucas entered the interview room, playing his part perfectly. Mr. Carter, impressive resume. Please, call me Nathan. That practiced charm, spreading like oil on water. You left Carter Technologies rather abruptly. Nathan's smile flickered. Creative differences with the leadership. My wife's condition made things complicated. Your wife. Lucas consulted his notes. Evangeline Carter. Co-founder. Ex-co-founder. She's taking some time to focus on her health. My fingers dug into my palms. Beside me, Megan tensed. And your new venture? Lucas asked. Carter Innovation Labs. A fresh start. Speaking of which. Nathan leaned forward. I understand you're having security issues. Particularly with protecting intellectual property. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Oh? I have sources suggesting your encryption protocols are vulnerable. Nathan's smile turned predatory. I could help with that. The door opened. Right on cue, Rachel Carter walked in. Nathan's composure cracked. Mother? What are you? I'm sorry, Nathan. Rachel's voice shook. I can't do this anymore. She placed a folder on the table. Documents. Bank statements. Proof of every lie. What is this? Nathan's charm vanished. Mother, we discussed this. You discussed nothing. Megan stepped into the room. You ordered, threatened, and manipulated. Just like always. Nathan stood so quickly his chair toppled. Megan. What's going on? Sit down, Dad. Her voice was steel. Or should I call Michael's father? The color drained from his face. How did you know about your other family? I stepped through the door, dropping the Sarah Evans disguise like a shed skin. Our daughter is smarter than either of us gave her credit for. Eva. He whispered my name like a curse. This is impossible. You're unstable. Paranoid. In need of medical leave. I smiled. Amazing what a woman can accomplish when everyone underestimates her. He lunged for the documents, but Lucas was faster. These copies are just courtesy. The originals are already with the SEC. You're bluffing. Like you bluffed about my college fund. Megan's voice cracked. Or about Mom's company. Or about Michael. Nathan's face twisted. You don't understand. I did this for us. For our family. Which family? Rachel interrupted. The one you betrayed or the one you hid? The door opened again. A woman entered, young, pretty, holding a toddler with Nathan's eyes. Sarah. Nathan stumbled back. No. You can't be here. Actually, I said, she can. Sarah's been very helpful, especially after learning about the offshore accounts you kept from her. You built your new company with stolen money, Megan added. Our money. While your son needed surgery. Sarah hugged Michael closer. You said you'd pay for his operation. That the delay was just paperwork. Nathan looked around wildly, seeing nothing but betrayal in every face. This is a setup. You're all conspiring. To what? I stepped closer. Tell the truth. Show you for who you really are. His hand shot out, grabbing my arm. You vindictive. The camera clicked. Alex lowered his phone, smiling. Assault caught on camera. Nice touch. Security arrived, right on schedule. As they led Nathan away, he kept shouting about conspiracies, about my instability, about his innocence. Nobody believed him. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, watching my daughter comfort her sobbing grandmother, seeing Sarah shield Michael from his father's rage, I felt hollow. Mom. Megan touched my arm where Nathan had grabbed me. Are you okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. My phone buzzed, Chen calling. Time to explain why his new hire was being escorted out in handcuffs. Time to face the consequences of my own deceptions. The game wasn't over. It had just changed again. The anonymous blog post appeared 3 days after Nathan's arrest. The truth about Fresh Start Tech, a whistleblower's account. Every detail about their security vulnerabilities. Every weakness I'd identified in my first report to Chen, twisted into weapons. It's him, Alex confirmed, tracing the IP address. He's using a VPN, but the writing pattern matches Nathan's emails perfectly. I stared at my phone as Fresh Start's stock price plummeted. Chen had already called twice. He's desperate, Megan said, reading over my shoulder. This is sloppy. No. I stood up, grabbing my coat. This is bait. The prison visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and desperation. Nathan sat across from me, orange jumpsuit stark against his pale skin, but his smile hadn't changed. I wondered how long it would take you, he said. The blog stops now. What blog? His innocence was practiced, perfect. I'm in here, remember? Thanks to your little performance. You're destroying people's lives, Nathan. Fresh Start's employees, their families. Like you destroyed mine. His mask slipped, just for a moment. How's Michael, by the way? Bonding with his big sister. My phone buzzed. Alex, second post just dropped. Stocks in freefall. You want something, I said. What is it? Nathan leaned forward. A deal. You convince the SEC to drop the charges, I stop the leaks. You'd still lose everything. I already lost everything. His laugh was bitter. But so will you. Every company you touch, every project you start, I'll be there, Eva. In the shadows, waiting. My phone buzzed again. Megan, Mom, check your email. Now. I pulled up my inbox, found a forwarded message from Rachel. The subject line, insurance policy. What's wrong? Nathan's smile widened. Unexpected development. The attachment was a video, Nathan in his office, but not the one I'd seen before. This was older, from when we first started the company. He was talking to Rachel, outlining his plans, how he'd use my ideas, my work, build his empire on my foundation. You planned this from the beginning, I whispered. Business is business. He shrugged. You were brilliant but naive. The perfect combination. My phone lit up with another message. Alex, third post ready to launch. Say the word. I looked at Nathan, really looked at him. The man I'd loved, the father of my child, the architect of so many lies. He thought he was still playing chess, still moving pieces on a board. You're right, I said. Business is business. I stood up, pulled out my own phone, and played Rachel's video. Watched his smile fade as his younger self detailed every aspect of his long con. That's not. Where did you get that? Your mother had a conscience after all. I moved toward the door. The SEC already has a copy. Along with evidence of every blog post you've orchestrated from in here. Eva, wait. The posts stop now, Nathan. Or tomorrow's headline won't be about Fresh Start's vulnerabilities. It'll be about how you planned this entire scheme before we even got married. You're bluffing. I turned back, met his eyes. Am I? His face contorted. I'll destroy you. No. I smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in months. You already tried that. And look where we are. As I walked out, my phone buzzed one last time. Alex, Fresh Start stock stabilizing. Chen wants to meet. Then Megan, Mom, Sarah's here with Michael. He's asking about his dad. The weight of it all, the revenge, the lies, the collateral damage, settled on my shoulders. Nathan had tried to turn me into him, make me play his game. And I'd almost let him. Tell Sarah I'm on my way, I texted back. It's time we all talked about the future. Behind me, through the prison doors, I could hear Nathan shouting, demanding to see his lawyer, trying to regain control. But his voice grew fainter with each step I took toward the exit. Some games, I realized, you win by stopping playing. My phone buzzed again, Chen calling. Time to face the music, rebuild what Nathan had tried to destroy. But this time, I'd do it my way. The sun hit my face as I stepped outside. Somewhere in the city, my daughter was waiting with her little brother. A family born from lies, but maybe, just maybe, one that could heal through truth. The letter arrived on Megan's graduation day, delivered to Fresh Start Tech's reception desk. Nathan's handwriting, once so familiar, now looked like a stranger's scrawl. I sat in my office, the envelope untouched on my desk, while downstairs Megan showed Michael around the building. His excited chatter about computers and robots echoed through the halls, a reminder that innocence could survive even the darkest betrayals. You don't have to read it, Rachel said, settling into the chair across from me. Our weekly lunches had become a ritual of healing, each of us rebuilding what Nathan had broken. I know. I picked up the envelope. But I think I need to. The letter was short, just one page. No manipulations, no grand schemes. Just numbers, account details, passwords, instructions for recovering everything he'd stolen. At the bottom, 3 words, I'm truly sorry. My phone buzzed. Megan, ready when you are. I found them in the lobby, Michael perched on his sister's hip, pointing at the massive digital display showing Fresh Start's latest projects. Sarah stood nearby, watching her son with a mixture of love and worry I'd come to recognize in myself. "Ready for your big moment?" I asked Megan. She handed Michael to Sarah and pulled out her tablet. "Are you?" The document was already loaded, her story, our story, ready to be published. Not a tale of revenge or betrayal, but of truth and consequences. Every detail meticulously documented, every lie exposed, every lesson learned. "You don't have to do this," I said. "Yes, I do." She met my eyes. "For Michael. For everyone who trusted him. For us." The lobby filled with familiar faces: Alex, Lucas, Chen, the entire Fresh Start family. They gathered around the display screen, waiting for Megan's signal. "Before you do this," I handed her Nathan's letter. He sent account details. "Everything he took, we can get back." She read it quickly, then folded it into a perfect square. "It's not about the money anymore, Mom." It never really was. With a tap on her tablet, her story appeared on the massive screen. The Price of Trust, A Family's Journey Through Betrayal and Recovery, by Megan Carter. The room fell silent as people began to read. Not just about Nathan's crimes, but about Rachel's courage, Sarah's strength, Michael's innocence. About a daughter watching her family shatter and rebuild. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Nathan's prison email account. I saw the preview. "She writes like you. Tell her. Tell her I'm proud." I deleted it without responding. Some bridges stay burned. "Mom." Megan's voice pulled me back. "We'll be late for graduation." Later, watching her cross the stage in her cap and gown, I thought about revenge and justice, about the fine line between protecting and controlling. Nathan had taught us all that lesson, though not in the way he intended. Michael cheered from Sarah's lap as Megan accepted her diploma. Rachel wiped tears from her eyes. Alex and Lucas, sitting a few rows back, gave standing ovations. And now, the principal announced, our valedictorian, Megan Carter. She took the podium, notes untouched in her hands. "Today we talk about new beginnings," she started. "But every beginning comes from an ending. The trick is knowing which endings to accept, and which ones to rewrite." Her eyes found mine in the crowd. In that moment, I saw not just my daughter, but a woman who had learned to forge strength from broken trust, wisdom from pain. The story wasn't over, it never really would be. Nathan's shadow would linger in Michael's questions, in Rachel's regrets, in the quiet moments when memories ambushed us. But we had chosen to write our own endings, to build something new from the ruins of his lies. Megan's voice carried across the auditorium, strong and clear. The truth isn't always clean or simple. Sometimes it breaks everything you thought you knew. But in that breaking, you find out what's real, what matters, what's worth fighting for. She was right. The truth had broken us. But in breaking, we had become something stronger, not despite Nathan's betrayal, but because of how we chose to rise above it.